I'm back with some more topics that were posed to me right before Christmas of 2016. And the next person is Rob Chambers. Hey, Rob, how's it going? And so Rob was asking, hey, we finally got a topic that's not about comeback playing or coming back to the horn after an accident or whatnot. So this is different. Rob wanted to know about trumpet selection for the kind of music being played. So, in a way, some of it's kind of common sense and logical. For example, if you play in a symphony orchestra, it seems like almost always you're going to be on a C trumpet and not a B flat trumpet. A lot of times you'll have to have a piccolo trumpet handy too, just depending on what kind of orchestra it is. So, right off the bat, if you play in a classical symphony orchestra, you're almost always going to have a C trumpet ready to rock and roll in that kind of ensemble. For solos, sometimes cornet can really sound nice. If you go way back to the early 90s and even the late 80s, you'll see that Wynton Marsalis tended to play a lot of his solo work on cornet. Of course, some of these were bona fide cornet solos, but still, he did use his cornet. The cornet is a conical-based instrument. Conical meaning like cone, ice cream cone. So the taper kind of flares out more like that, where trumpet tends to be more cylindrical, so a little bit more even tubing. When you play on a conical, think French horn. You know, it starts off and it's got all the curly cues and it gradually goes out to this big bell. Range tends to be easier on a conical bore type of instrument, like cornet or French horn. But it's also fraught with intonation problems and what was the other thing that I was going to say about it? Projection. So, you know, you're just not going to be able to peel paint off the back of an auditorium wall with French horn, even if you turned around and had the bell facing towards the audience. The projection just won't be there. Same thing on a cornet. And so, just in case you didn't know this, one of my heroes, Herbert L. Clark, who taught Claude Gordon and others, he was really against this instrument. There was a letter that I think he wrote to Eldon Binge, I've seen somewhere. He talks about trumpet as being a passing fad and just to stay with cornet because that's the good instrument to play. So, and then also, if you step over to Europe, there's a lot of brass bands that primarily just use cornet. In fact, some of them, some even use the high E-flat cornet for particular music. So, a cornet can be good if you're doing solos. If you're in a wind ensemble or a concert band, something like that, you get a more buttery, warmer, smoother, darker sound. It seems like the flexibility is a little bit easier on a cornet. So that would be a consideration for the type of trumpet and the type of music. If you get into cover music, pop music, funk music, rock music, your B-flat trumpet is going to be the way to go. You're not going to use a C trumpet in those venues, or not venues, those ensembles. Brass quintet, I've done quite a bit of that, and I've always used a B-flat trumpet and or piccolo in B-flat A. So, but if you're a hardcore classical orchestral guy, you probably could, also, there's probably groups that just use nothing but a C trumpet, for example, in those groups. I remember, I probably can't even do it now. I used to play the Hummel, and I had trouble with different things in the Hummel. Things like that. I played the whole Hummel concerto, all three movements, on the big B-flat horn, just because I didn't have access to an E-flat. Wow. And then years down the road, I was messing around on a friend's E-flat, and it was so much easier, folks. Especially that little lick at the end of the hummel, which I probably can't play now. That one. Do you know how much easier that is to play on an E-flat trumpet? And I beat my brains out practicing that thing over and over on this huge, the big B-flat horn, man. I just didn't have an extra couple $1,000s to have an E-flat trumpet, just for some of those different concertos I did. So I did it on the B-flat. And I kind of paid the price. It was a lot harder. So when you see Maurice Andre or Winton or the girls, I call them the three amigas, Alison Balsam, Tyne Helseth, and what's that other girl's name? Mary. I should have already thought of this, written it down before I mentioned it. But you got three gorgeous, cute, blonde-haired girls. They almost all look like Barbies. They're all good classical players. And when they play something like the Hummel, they will play it on the right instrument, the E-flat. And you watch them play it, it sounds easy the way they're making it sound. Part of it is the horn. I guarantee you put them on the B-flat trumpet and have them play the entire Hummel, and they're going to struggle quite a lot more than they are when they're playing on the E-flat. So that's that one. Piccolo trumpet is primarily for, Baroque and classical and stuff like that. It does tend to give you a little bit more range, but what it really does is it makes your range lock in. The slotting on a piccolo, especially a really good piccolo, in the upper register, like from F on the staff to high F above high C, feels almost like F on the bottom of the staff to F on right at the top line of the staff on this guy. So that's what's cool about piccolo trumpet. You're playing from F up to F above high C on piccolo, and the notes just lock in. They slot right. And anyway, and you're more accurate, and I think you're able to be more dynamically, musically sensitive when you're playing piccolo. Now, you may have noticed if you scroll through my videos, I'm actually, trying to find a piccolo for myself, because not only do I want to do a Maurice Andre tribute, I was actually in San Francisco when Maurice Andre passed away. I think it was February. 5 years, yeah, it's coming up on February 2012. I remember when I got the news he passed away. I've done a tribute for Maynard. I've done several of those. And I would like to put together a nice little tribute for Maurice Andre and record that, but maybe do a couple of live performances at maybe some churches or some colleges. And I would definitely do the Vivaldi, because that's one of my favorite of his. Probably would have to do the Michael Haydn, and the Brandenburg. There's a couple other ones that I like that he did, so we'll see how it works out. That's why I'm trying to get a piccolo. But why I brought that up is Bud Brisbois, if you listen to some of his stuff, he actually played piccolo on some of his jazz stuff. And I was listening to Superstar. So if you put in the search at YouTube, Bud Brisbois, Brisbois, Superstar, it sounds like he's starting out on flugelhorn maybe, or trumpet, but at some point he's got a piccolo in hand, and he's playing a lot of his jazz stuff on the piccolo. And so I want to do a tribute for Bud, at least do one of his songs, and I'd like to do that one, and I would need a piccolo for that to pull it off the way he made it sound. There's also another tribute for Bud Brisbois. It was a kind of a compilation of some different things that he did. Some of his last performances where he's playing piccolo too. So Bud tended to like to jazz it up on piccolo. So that's, of course, atypical. You normally don't hear someone playing piccolo trumpet in a more commercial or pop or jazz type setting, but Bud Brisbois got away with it and pulled it off pretty good. So I think I've gone through the main ensembles that you're likely to play in. Of course, big band, swing band, jazz ensemble, jazz band. You were talking Count Basie to Buddy Rich, Frank Mantooth, Bill Holman, Maynard, Bud, Louis, Fat Man, whatever, you're pretty much going to be on the B flat trumpet and flugel. Now, for most of my career, I've not had a flugel, and what I do is I walk in with a really nice solo bucket mute. If you've seen those black solo bucket mutes, and I've gotten away with like when you know, especially when I sit in with the man, I'll just put that guy in, and I'll put a little bit of the horn, the bell in my stand, and it has a nice buttery, warmer, darker sound, just almost like a flugel. So I typically won't show up at a gig, you know, with this guy and a flugelhorn, and you know, I just will show up with my mutes, unless a recording is going to take place and they're going to record it. Then of course I'll have to show up with a flugel, because the whole section will be using that. But a lot of times I can sound pretty good with B flat trumpet and that really nice bucket solo mute. It really sounds good. It really does. In fact, I did one of the Arbin's etudes with that on, and it came out sounding pretty good. You should see that on my YouTube channel here. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, I'm addressing Rob Chambers' topic about horn selection and the type of ensemble that you play in. So I'm guessing some of you already knew what I just said, but for those of you who didn't or hadn't thought about it the way I just presented it, then this was a pretty good topic for you to pay attention to. If you got the money, ideally you want to have a B flat horn. You'd like to have a C trumpet. You'd like to have a flugelhorn. You'd like to have a good B flat A piccolo, and then you'd like to have an E flat trumpet. And doggone, sometimes those E flat trumpets are E flat D, E flat / D. So when we get into all the lands of the different pitch trumpets, I'm a little bit out of my element. I mainly just do everything on the B flat horn, and sometimes, like I mentioned with the Hummel, to my own detriment. I mean, it'd be if you haven't ever tried that, if you're a classical guy, well, you probably already know this, but if you do a little classical and you mainly play on a B flat, and you're trying some of the concertos like the Haydn or the Hummel, borrow an E flat and watch how the notes just lock in. You're more accurate. It's easier. It's just night and day. It makes playing a concerto like the Hummel just, like, a hot knife cutting through butter if you got the E flat to play it with instead of the bighorn. All right, Rob, so I think we did justice to your topic. And as always, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thanks again for watching this video. I hope that you got something out of it. Sometimes I make a video just to make you laugh. A lot of times I make a video to educate you on something and maybe even help solve a problem. So I hope something like that occurred for you in this video. And while you're at it, again, subscribe, click on my website link, and go on to the next video. It's lovely out here. Have a great day.